Hi. Good morning to everyone. How are you? Good? Yeah, I'm super excited to open this conference. This is a fifth or fourth edition of Prague City Data Congress. Two of them had to be online or hybrid. But this year we are back with fully offline conference. Although we build digital products and we talk about data, meeting people in person always bring something extra, and I bet we all missed that. So let me start with a very simple question. Raise your hand if you agree that, or if you think that City of Prague is data-driven. Yeah, well, that's actually a very nice ratio. It's better than, not the usual answer I get, but your special audience. I will save the answer for later. My name is Benedikt Kotmel, and I'm happy to be responsible for this amazing team, which is here and which is building unified data platform Golimio. As it was mentioned, Petr mentioned, we work in the company Operátor ICT, which is 100% owned by the city, so we work directly for the city. Before then, I was working for the Ministry of Finance as an open data project manager, and I was responsible for open data and transparency strategy of the Ministry of Finance. And in the last 8 years, I have talked to many different data stakeholders. I have consulted mayors, ministers, deputies, CEOs, but also very hard-working public officers. And I enjoy the most working with the lazy ones because they really like smart solutions as we do. Anyway, what we did was that we discussed the role of data in their organizations, goals of the organizations, and related motivation to encourage data usage. And very often we ended up discussing the motivation to work for public sector as well. And it was an amazing experience. And after a while, I realized that very often data plays different role than we tend to think. And to explain what I mean by that, we need to go back to my initial question. So is City of Prague data-driven? And I think we could extend the question to the whole public sector. So is public sector data-driven? Because when I talk about Prague, I might be a little bit biased. So the question, is the public sector data-driven? So the answer is very simple. Well, of course it is. It is. And here is how I know that, how I'm sure of that. In the Czech Republic, we have around 10 million people. And in public sector, there is around approximately 10,000 different information systems, officially registered as information systems, and each of them is generating some kind of data. There is around 100,000 public officers working directly for the ministries and related organizations, and I bet that there is at least one Excel sheet at every of their computers. And there is also around 8,000 web pages in public sector generating or consuming some kind of data. So there is a lot of data. Another question could be, is the data used for strategic decision-making? I could give you thousands of examples. I will give you just two very simple ones. This is a screenshot of the budget law, one of the most important laws in the Czech Republic or in any other country. And as you can see, the data is actually the content of that law, so it's very data-driven, and based on that data, the most strategic and biggest decisions are made. Another example is if you want to propose a new law, there is an obligatory document called Regulatory Impact Assessment, which specifically requires cost-benefit data analysis to show the impact of that new law, either economical or environmental, with data. So it's very data-based. With every new regulation, there is data supporting the new regulation. So yeah, we have a lot of data. It's huge, and it's really huge, and the data is used. We can't say opposite. It's used on a daily basis. But I believe that's not what we want to know, right? What we really want to know is whether we have inclusive and sustainable data ecosystems that supports us in making the smartest decisions we can. And that is something we are working on within our amazing project Golimio, City Data Platform Golimio. And I will show you some examples of what we do. For example, we collect, as Petr was talking about, we collect real-time data from hundreds of waste bins to optimized waste collection. We process real-time GPS data from buses and trams to deliver the most accurate information about bus delays. We cooperate with Seznam, and we use data from Airbnb to analyze housing market development. We work with data from smart metering. We cooperate with Google, and we have data exchange. They provide us data from waste application, so we can store them and do historical analysis of those. And we worked a lot with COVID and vaccination data, obviously. And yeah, we do a lot of things: public tenders, CCTVs, of course, Ukraine crisis. We have also built very nice web, pragosaur.cz, where you can find around 160 different data stories about city of Prague, and you can get the data there as well. And the way we operate, in total, I think we have around 15 different data domains, and we are providing around 120 data dashboards to the city management. And the way we operate is that we are delivering data services such as data analytics, data visualizations, or statistics, or data storage to municipal organizations. But when we do that, we integrate our data in our data platform, and we are reusing them with different stakeholders or with different organizations. What we also do is that we aggregate those data and provide them to the city council and to the management of the city. And if it makes sense, we also publish them as open data. And this is actually a very complex data ecosystem, a lot more complex than I expected when we started this project. And I would like to share something what I consider the 4 key aspects of sustainable and inclusive data ecosystems. There are more aspects, obviously, but what I have noticed is that those 4 are the most often underestimated. The first one is trust. You really need to have trust between data owners, data analysts, and decision makers. You have to trust that the data analysts, the way they present the data is correct. The way they transform data is based on good logic, but you also have to have trust with data owners that the way they collect the data is reliable, because if you can't rely on data and its analysis, you can't really use them, can you? A reuse of data and innovation in data, I think you need to have a system where you actively look for data reuse and data innovation. And for that, you need to have a team that is specifically designed to look for data innovations. And innovations in data, because it requires absolutely different mindset and skills than usual data analytics. Another thing is, if you are looking for new ways of using the data, you really need to know the context of the data, and you need to have the possibility to ask for another context if a new question arises. And most importantly, motivation and emotion. You have to know what is the motivation of which data user and what is the emotion in it, because only then you know how the data will be read. So trust, reuse of data, data innovation, context, and emotion. And how is this related to our overarching topic, which is climate change? The climate change is probably one of the biggest challenges we face as a humanity. And I want to ask you another question. Raise your hand if you agree that humans have effect on climate, that actually climate change is caused by humans. And that leads me to another question. Raise your hand if you would confirm that you truly understand how the data that supports the effect of humans on climate change is collected, measured, transformed, analyzed, and interpreted. Yeah. Me neither. I don't understand it either. But unfortunately, we're not a random sample of our population, and there is a lot of people who would have exactly the opposite answer. They don't believe in human effect on climate change because they understand the data. But I think the difference is that we believe in certain institutions that collect and analyze the data. We have trust that has been built over a few decades. And we probably also believe in their motivation and understand it, and probably we share similar emotion about it. I think one example you all know where we failed to take into account is COVID, pandemic. This is the number of people infected by COVID from over the whole pandemic in the Czech Republic. And as you can see, you can hardly see it here, we handled the first wave quite well. But interesting thing is that back then the government didn't have much information and much data. They just made a decision about the lockdown. And I think you all remember that people were willing to follow the restrictions and just stayed at home. Over the next half a year, here, the government learned how to collect the data, how to distribute them between all kinds of stakeholders. And after several discussions, they also decided to publish very detailed open data with the expectations that it will help people to understand the seriousness of the situation. Because what is more straightforward, the number of people dying of COVID, right? But eventually we ended up with over than 40,000 deaths due to COVID. And I think the data just didn't help the way we expected. And I realized this is happening again and again with different governmental data on a different scale. And from a data perspective, the climate change is a very similar thing to COVID, challenge to COVID. It's not just that fast and that straightforward. So what is it that actually brings the change? Data should and will play more and more important role in the future, but data is just data. Data don't talk, data don't suggest, data don't make implications, data don't make stupid decisions. People do that. And I think we need to understand more and more the role of data within the complexity of related ecosystems. And I think we, as a society, have just reached something I call it mountain of innovation bias, where we are so obsessed with those super successful data stories such as Facebook or Google or Prague, City of Prague, that we think that we can use data to solve any kind of problem. And the only thing we need is just more and more data analysis. But I think we need a lot more than that. And if there is one thing I want you to take away from this conference, is this. I think that to make lasting change, we need inclusive and sustainable data ecosystems that effectively work with trust, reuse of data, data innovation, context, and motivation and emotions. And that is why we organize this conference the way we do it, because besides classic lectures, you can join interactive case study sessions, hands-on debates, workshops, you can play games, you can go on a walk around greenery of Charles Square, you can go even on a bike ride. If you need anything from us, the organizers, just feel free to ask. We are here from you, and we want you to have the best possible time. Put simply, enjoy Prague City Data Congress.